Well, folks, OKC keeps rolling like a river. Rolling like a river. Rolling. Oh, boy. Hey, let me tell you guys. Dame Lillard, game time, and the Greek Freak. And I got to say something about this guy in a minute. And the Greek Freak didn't have bad shooting nights and weren't inefficient, but they didn't take that many shots. I think Dame took 9. I think Greek Freak took like 15. I mean, really? I think Dame had 0 fouls, and the Greek Freak had 1 foul. Rolling like a river. I wouldn't say, SGA had a great game, but he had a great team effort. It was a great team effort by his team. And another reason why SGA is solidified as the MVP. He's not only having a great season, but his team is playing for him, folks. Let's rewind this back, folks. And the reason why LeBron James was winning MVP in 2009 and 2010, and I mean, we can go to the super team Miami Heat, but we'll just keep it a buck. We'll keep it in Cleveland, right? And the reason why he was winning back-to-back MVPs in Cleveland is because his team was playing for him. Although they was covering his ass in a lot of ways. We could just say in the playoffs, right? They cover for him a lot in the playoffs, right? As much as they could, but they couldn't always be the ones who cover down the stretch, right? The GOAT has to be the one who takes the big shots. And they couldn't do that, and that really exposed LeBron James and how much his teams were covering for him. And you guys know that I told you I would go back and look at, if they carried back in the 2000s. And I told you, I would go back and I would go look at LeBron games versus Kobe. When Kobe and LeBron, they squared up and see if, they were allowed to carry. Man, it was just crazy. When you go back and watch these things, it was really crazy to go back and look at it. I saw what I saw. I saw what I seen. I seen what I saw. I mean, it was crazy, folks. It was just like I was living in a whole different world. And I was able to take it further than that, right? I said, well, let me go back to the 90s and see what's going on. And then I saw what was going on in the 90s, right? And then I said, well, something popped up and it said, Bulls versus the Lakers, 89. I said, okay, well, let me click on that and see how they were playing and see how they were dribbling. So I guess I'll start from the furthest back. And what I saw in that Lakers versus Bulls game in 89, of course it was a whole different game, but it wasn't a lot of dribbling, folks. You just got the ball to point A, to point B, to point C. It was it was just not enough space to dribble. And the dribbling was just really tight. So you just couldn't be out there flaunting the ball like that. You just couldn't. A dude would just rip your pocket. And you would think man, these guys really don't know how to dribble because they don't dribble like you just couldn't. You couldn't dribble like that. You're going to get, your pocket is going to get picked. So it was really hard to see, like I said, because it wasn't a lot of dribbling. And as great as Magic Johnson was, I just didn't see it, folks. It was hard for me to see a carry. It was just tight dribbling, fast dribbling, like bam, bam. The ball would hit your hand, hit the court, hit your hand. It wasn't like nothing in between. It wasn't it was real tight dribbling. And hand over the ball. And of course, the ball wasn't out. The ball wasn't out. The ball wasn't dribbled loosely. I know I keep saying that, but it just wasn't. And I keep saying it wasn't because they didn't know how to dribble. You just didn't dribble like that. And I think some of it's just taught. You know what I'm saying? Some of it's muscle memory. This is the only way you're supposed to dribble. Hand over the ball in tight dribbles, maybe up to your waist. That's about it, folks. So it wasn't really too much to see there. Like I said, the paint was crowded, and the ball just went to point A. Everything is just tight back then. So I was able to, and that went for every player too. Scottie Pippen was dribbling, Michael Jordan, Michael Cooper. It just wasn't no long strides with the ball. These guys were professional pickpockets back then, right? They were looking for the opportunity to get that steal. This is what these guys wanted to do on the perimeter. This is what these guys keyed into. This is what I'm going to do this year. I'm going to lead the league in steals. I'm going to get easy points from steals. There's no like fumbling of the ball and the guy will get a steal like that. That goes on today, folks. Guys don't know how to dribble and like I said, flaunting the ball and mishandling the ball, things like that, making error passes. So yeah, let's move on. So we get to, I think I was watching 97 Bulls and Knicks. Same thing, folks. Same thing. It just, I didn't see nothing. I really didn't see nothing. And the stuff that let's go and keep it the same, right? Say from 97 all the way until, about 2000 and, what did I see? A Lakers Cavs game. I saw that in like 2006. I want to say 2006. And it was the same thing, really. The paint was crowded. Now, they were a little bit looser with the ball in the 2000s at Lakers Cavs game. But it was just more guys in the paint. And it was just like ball to point A, point B. It wasn't a lot of dribbling. It just wasn't. I mean, guys could pick the ball from you then. It just wasn't a lot of dribbling, wasn't a lot of space. A lot of times what you thought you was going to see a carry, as far as them putting their hand under the ball, they would go to pass the ball. So you thought, man, maybe it was going to be a carry, but they stopped the dribbling and threw the ball. It was something like that. Sometimes, and this is what we're going to get into the next few years, but sometimes we got to realize these guys, their hands are so big. So it's easy to manipulate the ball, and it might look like a carry. So what these guys would do when we got into the 2000s, the early 2000s, I'll tell you what was it? No, it was 2007. It was 2007 game, because they were talking about the Cavs that just went to the finals. So this was a Christmas game in 2007, and like I said, their hands are so big that they manipulate the ball from like the side, right? They were dribbling with their hand on top, and then when they would grab the ball again, it was weird, man. They would grab it from the side, and it kind of looked like they were going up and under, but they were going side and under, and then they would just do that sometimes and go like dribble side and over. My fault. Side and over. They're like, that's how they would dribble. So it looked like a carry, but their hand wasn't under the ball. So they were dribbling, because their hand's so big. So it's like side over instead of over, down. That's how they were dribbling. But this is what I can tell you, folks. LeBron James was able to carry back then. He just was, folks. Did he do it a lot? Nope. But he was able to put his hand under the ball, and he was able to dribble high. And when we moved to, I went to about 2009, and this is when the guys start spreading out of the paint. They weren't all at the 3-point line, but before, what I was telling you, it was crowded because a lot of times, the 3, the 4, and the 5 will be in the paint or just outside the paint, in that area. Maybe the 5 will be in the paint, and the 3 and 4 will be right outside the paint on the box and stuff like that. From what I told you, what was it, like 89 all the way until 2007, right? So when we got into that range of 2009, and for some reason they would not let me a LeBron and Kobe game in 2011. They won't let me see a full game. I don't know, was he hurt that season? I don't think so. I think they would only let me see highlights or some crazy stuff like that. But and then I'm going to tell you how LeBron was acting back then. So 2009, the guys stopped crowding the paint, And the center was in the paint. Oh, I got to tell you this first. We already know this in the 90s, but I was really shocked to see, 2007, like I said, these guys were like monsters. These guys, the players were like monsters compared to these guys. We always like to say, yeah, 90s, 80s guys were like just huge. No. LeBron was just another big guy back then. Yes, he had more muscle than a lot of those guys back then in 2007, but he was just another big guy. It was almost like, what am I seeing? And also, I guess because of the guys were bigger back then, even in 2007, that it makes them look taller, right? So a 6'8" guy back then, he looks like a foot taller. I'm not lying. Or I wouldn't say foot, just like, maybe like 3-4 inches, right? Taller than a 6'8" guy today. It's nuts, folks. I mean, LeBron, that's the problem with LeBron James back then. He wasn't a man playing amongst boys back then. He just wasn't. He wasn't. Yes, he had, a great stature, and he had, LeBron had muscle tone coming out of high school. He's been lifting weights since then. You gotta remember, he was playing high school football, and I don't know if he started lifting weights because of that. Probably so, but he just got a big stature. So I mean, it did help on his shooting, but the guys were just bigger, even in the early 2000s, man. In 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, the guys were just bigger. They were just bigger. And it's like watching kids play today. It's like watching little boys play that are anorexic, who have no appetite, like don't want to put on any muscle tone from women, because we got to remember, like, the 90s, and I would say a lot of the 2000s was like, people like to lift weights. And if you remember, the gym was real big, and Mr. Olympia was real big. Men walking around with muscle and muscle tone and all this stuff. And it just reminds me of, like, I'm not going to say rappers back in the 80s and 90s and, 2000s were lifting weights, but I was just like, because I couldn't get with the whole rap vibe, especially because Drake took it over. Canadian Drake took over hip hop in the 2010s. So I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not singing with Drake, and I'm not singing with none of these so-called thugs that's copying Drake's style. Well, I mean, I'm not going to do it. You can do it. I'm not singing. Okay. So I basically stopped listening to hip hop in the 2010s. I said, no, I'm not singing. If I want to sing, I'm gonna listen to R&B, some Luther Vandross, some Stevie Wonder, some, what I'm saying, some Prince, some Tevin Campbell. Get the hell out of here. Tony Braxton. No, I'm not singing with rappers. Say Sesame Street. So, anyways, but as time went by, and I could hear people playing these rap songs, and I'm like, why are the rappers now? They sound like they're, trying to hit puberty. Like, their voices have no bass in it no more. They no longer sound like men. And I didn't know what they looked like because I stopped listening to this era rap. So I stopped watching the videos, right? So sometimes somebody will be like, man, have you ever heard of little baby, this dude? And I'm like, no, man. Or these other rappers, right? Mainly, I would say about, especially, 215 and on. And I said, well, let me see who this is, man. It's got to be a little ass baby because they sound like little babies. And and I go punch him up, and I'm like, what the hell is this? This dude was talking all this trash, and he looks like what I was just saying. Like, he's struggling to hit puberty. And I was just like, well, how does this dude? And I punch these guys up. They're like 18, 21, 25. And I'm like, but why do they look like they're 12 years old, though? And I'm like, these are the threatening rappers that people, I just couldn't even believe it. And then I was, telling people who listen to this music, and I'm like, dude, they look like little babies. Why do they look so young? And they sound like, MC Light and Queen Latifah and Salt and Pepper, they had more male voices than these guys. They had deeper voices than this era rappers, what we say, the 215s all the way until now. So I'm like, asking dudes who listen to this Sesame Street sing along, I'm like, why do they sound like this? And they're like, oh, because they're young, man. I said, why do they look like? Because they're young. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Kumo D, LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane, Run DMC. What are we talking about? Tupac, Biggie, Nas, just about every rapper back in the day from the 80s and 90s. And you can say that the 2000s were all the same age, folks, when they came out. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and they all looked and sounded like men. Men! And people always, they don't know what to say after that. And I was just saying that because it just coincides with this era of NBA players, folks. They don't want to step on the court and look like men. I don't give a damn if you was flying up and down the court at a fast pace. Go look at the 60 players. They look like men. It was a fast-paced game. They looked like men and they were built like men. Look at the 80s. It wasn't a slow-paced game. It was a faster-paced game. It was a faster-paced game than the 90s, especially on the West Coast. So those guys were built like men. And I'm not specifically saying they were all lifting weights or anything like that. No, because they weren't doing that in the 2000s, and they were bigger than this era. Look at LeBron James. Do you think he was lifting weights because the hell of it? No, he wanted to look good for the women. And nobody said you had to be big as Karl Malone. Nobody said that. But you were going up against other men with size. So you wanted to be able to get a step up on them, right? I just don't get it how these guys could literally step on the court and be bags of bones, like poking the hell out of people. Like a woman walk up to you like, you look good. You look good, bag of bones. I mean, and even when we're talking about guy for guy, when I was looking at the point guards, even Muggsy Bogues, by the time he got in his prime, he was yoked. My boy was yoked. Swell Webb wasn't running around looking like a bag of bones. Bro, nobody was wanting to look, even the point guards, even the guards, period, was not walking around like a bag of bones. Scottie Pippen was what you call skinny back then, folks. What's his name? Manute Bol even came into the league skinny and put a little bit of weight on him. And you would just call him skinny, but you wouldn't call him a bag of bones. These guys, SGA is a bag of bones, folks. Jamal Murray is a bag of bones. They have no muscle tone. And that's what I was going to get to when I was just about to say Greek Freak earlier, that Greek Freak, he wouldn't even be big in like the 90s, a big dude for a power forward. He'd still be skinny. I was looking at him yesterday, and I'm like, after I was watching those games in the 2000s and the 90s and the 80s, I'm like, Greek is still not a power forward back in the day, folks. Greek Freak is, I don't know, to be lucky to be, what do you call it? A small forward. That's it. Greek Freak would be a small forward. He's still skinny. He's still too skinny. He would get pushed around even in the 2000s. I won't consider him a power forward. Too skinny. Yes, he has a little muscle tone on him now. But he's not that big, folks. He's big in comparison to these guys. These guys have no muscle tone. Greek Freak is still skinny. So yeah, that's about it with the dribbling thing. Oh yeah, okay. So I think I left off, what was it, 2009? And yes, LeBron was doing more, high dribbling then. He did some carries. I forget this guy's name that made he made the All-Star team with LeBron James that year. Not Boobie Gibson, I forget his name. He was doing a lot of carrying too. But these guys dribble fast back then, with their movement, so you could barely tell, and the ball wasn't real loose. You know what I'm saying? So you really couldn't tell. I didn't see a lot of carrying with Kobe. And if he did, it was real fast. I think, as a matter of fact, I think I did see some, but it was real fast. So it was hard to see these guys carry because it was real fast. Except for LeBron James, he was dribbling high. So I think it was, I want to say 2012, I got to see a game, and even in 2009, like I said, the guys were coming out of the paint. Maybe you had two guys in the paint, a power forward and a center, and that's about it. The guys were coming out of the paint. By 2012, and the thing that I seen a lot was it was mostly LeBron James teams they like to play outside the paint, almost like today, especially when we got to the Miami Heat team. But you could see, you know, it was like that a little bit, you know, in the late 2000s when I was watching the games with his teams, the Cavs. You know, a lot of them like to be out the paint and open the paint up. You know, that's why I kept trying to tell you guys that Curry, you know, didn't really start this three-point assault. It was LeBron James and his teams that, you know, he liked to put his teams, especially in the late 2000s, on the perimeter so he could drive and kick it out to those three-point guys. So, to me, I think that was a more of a, what do you call it? That was more of a Euro thing. They got that from the Euro players, especially when they went to the FIBA and they went to the Olympics in the 2000s, got rolled, and that's why they got rolled, because the international players were playing that game. So the LeBron James, he started incorporating that into his teams. But you know, when we got into the 210s, you know, these guys were just getting out the paint. It wasn't like the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, and I think it's because you can see the power forward really dying, and the center he really didn't come out the paint too much. Maybe he came to the elbow, the free throw line or something like that. But yeah, he didn't come out the paint too much. But yeah, these guys were coming out the paint. You know, I think the NBA wanted that, and then LeBron James wanted that, so he can open up that lane so he can drive. But that's a whole different story. No, I was telling you, LeBron James started that, you know, put his team on a three-point line, and them shooting a lot of threes. That wasn't Curry. That wasn't Curry. LeBron James was doing that a long time ago, opening up the paint so he can drive. So yeah, right there in 2012, they were carrying more. Kobe Bryant, no doubt about it. But like I said, it wasn't a lot though. The ball wasn't out to where you could like see it. Today, these guys just start their dribble from the inbounds, carry, and then you know, defender will come up on them and they'll put the ball out, you know, to their side or something like that, and be carrying with ball a hand under the ball and doing under over just repeatedly. So it's like, fuck it. Who cares about, you know, who cares about basketball? who cares about the fundamentals, basically? And who was I listening to? Uncut. He was saying that today they play, what was it? Accidental basketball or something like that? Drive, what do you say? Drive and kick. Drive and kick. And that's what I was saying too. Was it accidental or incidental or something like that? He was saying there's no purpose to the game, which means there's no X's and O's. So if you don't have X's and O's, and plays really being called up to get a score, and you're just driving to kick the ball out, then what? You lose the fundamentals of the game. That's just how it is, folks. They had to change the game to bring in these players who will get destroyed by 2000s. I would think 210s too. I mean, but they would get destroyed by 2000s, 90s. They would get destroyed by these guys. They would eat them alive. They would eat them alive. And they would let them shoot their three-point contest. Go ahead, folks. You shoot your three-point contest, we're going to play our fundamentals when we get back on the other side of the court. The problem with your three-point contest, why you're not going to win, because we got all-time great defenders on the perimeter. So when you try to drive, guess what's going to happen? A guy's not going to collapse. We're not going to collapse a guy to help defend you while you're driving. We're not going to do that. So you're going to have to go against a great defender on the perimeter while you're driving. And guess what? You're not going to get that bucket. You just drove for no reason. Because you're too little, you're too small. The guys back then were big and fast on the perimeter. That's what you don't get. So you will go down, and now you have to play the fundamental style of basketball where the guy is just going to eat you alive. Because now, let's say if you don't have a 7-footer. So we're going to dump it down to a 7-footer and just crush you. A Shaq, Alonzo Mourning, you know, name whoever you want to name. You're going to get crushed. Patrick Ewing, King Olajuwon, you don't have a 7-footer. Oh, you want to go against a power forward? You're going to get crushed. Because your power forward is like 50 pounds undersized, if not more. What? You're going to sit there and carry in front of me? You're going to get ripped. And that's another reason why dudes didn't carry back then. Because if you sit up there and put that dribble out there, you're going to get ripped. You just got to go point, 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 and dribble that ball right next to you, tight. So you're gonna get ripped. I mean, they will get destroyed. These players today will get humiliated, man. Be like men playing with boys. It would be heartbreaking. These coaches will continue to get embarrassed because these coaches aren't coaching basketball, folks. They're not coaching. They're just letting these guys play what we say, accidental basketball or something like that. They don't know how to play fundamental basketball. Just whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and keep beating up on them. You just kind of feel sorry for them when you see these guys compared to these guys in the past. They just don't compare, man. They will get destroyed. So yeah, you guys tell me what you think, man. This era is what it is. I mean, it seemed like cheap labor. Everything's, in this era, just like really dumbed down. The sports, the movies, the music, the, politics, everything is just like the people. It's ridiculous.